Welcome to this episode of Gogopreneur. I am so super excited to interview Leo Pareja, the CEO of EXP. Why? Because he's a super duper cool individual. He sold his first house when he was 19. He has never had what I call a real job, a boss, so said, until this job at EXP Realty. He is an amazing CEO. For this to be his first job, I think he's killing it. And I get to interview him today to ask him everything about his journey, how to get here, what are the lessons that he learned today. And I think you would be interested to kind of get that, 45 minutes in his brain to see what it takes to be Leo Pareja, the CEO of the #1 producing real estate brokerage on earth. Let's do this.
Welcome to Gogopreneur, where Gogo Bethke, your host, interviews badass rock star entrepreneurs of the world, figuring out who they are, how they got to where they're at, and the lessons they learned along the way so you can learn those lessons and turn it into money. Let's go get them.
So I already did your intro. We can go right into getting to know Leo.
Awesome.
Do you want to hear some of the things that people say about you?
Love that.
Okay, let's do it.
Unless it's mean, then you can keep it to yourself. That's what my mama said.
Yeah, exactly. If you have nothing good to say, don't say anything, right? So we have a chain text we call the Alpha Ladies, right? And in that influence hers, we call each other. And in that group, I asked this morning, guys, tell me anything about Leo. I get to interview him today. Like, what questions do I need to ask him? What do I need to know? And Elizabeth Riley said, he's awesome. And encourage him to ask him just that. Tell me about you and your journey. He has a great story and you can build your questions from there. So you're awesome, Elizabeth Riley says. And then Tina Call said, he has never had a job. Being a CEO is his first job. He started in his early 20s in real estate and has sold thousands of homes. Started Remine and sold it to Google. Started Remine and sold it. Google it, she said. As the CEO of EXP, he is the best CEO EXP ever had. This is from Tina, just so you know. And to ladies, I know you did not want this out to the public, but hey, they might cut me out of the chain text now, Leo. And then Elizabeth Riley said, agree with the above. He sold his first home at age 19, but asked the story about it. So we're going to have to cover all of this. And I said I could probably relate to you quite a bit. So let's get started.
That's awesome. I appreciate that.
It's like, well, I figured you would like to know what people think about you. So congratulations, you do an amazing job, especially in I would say, probably one of the hardest times of real estate with the whole NAR issue. So I don't really want to go into that. I think
I've talked about that enough. I'm happy not to talk about that.
Yeah, I think we have killed that. But I do want to get to the point to realize, like, who are you? Like, how did you get to where you are? The whole idea of the Gogopreneur podcast is to understand life lessons from others who went through it. So we don't have to go through it ourselves. We can just take those lessons and implement and be really good at what we do. I always joke and say that entrepreneurship, it's kind of like a spaghetti, not a straight shot. It's more of like a cooked spaghetti. After you cook and you put it in a pot, it's like, good luck trying to find it, right? So how did you come about? So let's start with the age 19 thing that Elizabeth shared. So I hear you sold your first home at age 19. How did you even have a home at age 19?
It was, so I got into real estate at 19. I was a sophomore in college. I got into an argument with my landlord. And he's told me I needed to find a new place to live. And actually, let me back up a little bit. So I went to college to do graphic design. Actually, I wanted to build websites and software. So funny enough, I did end up doing that 20 years later. But I was in school during the tech bubble. In high school, I was getting offers to go work at companies like WorldCom and AOL that no longer exist. But back then, you needed a college degree. So it said, go to college and we'll recruit you. And my freshman year of college, all of that disappeared with the tech bubble blowing up. So that was actually my first experience seeing a market shift very quickly. I was getting $150,000 job offers as a freshman in college, which, in today's dollars is like $300,000-$400,000. And they disappeared. They were like, we don't even need those people anymore. So I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki because a friend's mom told me to. And I was kind of obsessed and fascinated with the concept of leverage. I come from a very traditional family. I'm Latino. My parents were both immigrants. Both of them had PhDs. And, if I didn't go to college, I probably wouldn't have been welcome home for dinner. And, I'd never had anyone talk about leverage of people, time, and money. And so that book was, a transformative moment in my life. Like if you read like a picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde, it's like, can a book change your life? And that book did for me very early on.
So
I went to,
can I stop you there for a second? Is it because the cultural thing, and at least for me, being from Eastern Europe, the cultural thing was hard work equals money.
well, yes. And it was also, you have to get a lot of education. That's how you move up in the world. At least for me, the way I was raised. And so I never heard of leverage in any capacity. It was like, you work very hard. Like leverage of time, leverage of people, and leverage of money were all new concepts to me in that book. So I decided I was going to become a real estate investor. This was at 18, so this was even before I got to 19. I went to a local real estate association meetup group for investors. I was obsessed. I went up to a gentleman who I actually met through my dad, who used a script on my dad and said, "How would you like to invest in real estate passively?" I went to coffee with him, and he asked me if I asked him if I could work for free for him, and he turned me down and said, "Hey, listen, I don't have time for snot-nosed kids. If you're serious, call this other guy." I called this other guy who is still a coach. And he told me, "I can teach you everything you want to know about real estate, but you need to give me $10,000. And that's about that age where I was 19. I said, I don't have any money. So I sold my car without telling my parents or my friends or family that I had paid for waiting tables. And I wired a stranger all my money. And I went into so think about it. That was 2001. So $10,000 was a lot more money back then. And we went into an intense mentorship relationship for a year. And one of the clauses in the contract, he spelled it out as wax on, wax off, that if it's legal and ethical, I had to do anything he told me to do. And what we did is he made me read a ton about psychology. We make emotional decisions and justify them logically. But we role played a ton. So like understanding how people make choices, how to ask questions. Like one of my biggest ahas is never go on an unqualified appointment, right? Like get to a no as fast as possible. Once you understand the motivations, always tie it back to the emotion. So like I actually became a student of sales. And in that 1 year process, he made me get my real estate license because he said, if you're going to be a good investor, you want to be able to have access to the MLS, list the properties yourself. And that's how I got my license. Most people don't hear that part of the story. I got into an argument with my landlord. I hung my license with the original guy who turned me down because he opened the KW office in the area I lived in. I was looking for rentals one morning on the MLS, and he said, "Why don't you buy a house?" I said, "I'm a child. I just turned 20 because it was a year into that relationship." He said, "You don't know that." He said, "Go talk to the loan officer down the hall." I got qualified for about $200,000 because I had good credit because I paid off this car. And then I convinced my parents my father to be my non-occupant co-borrower for 8 hours, right? Because I went to settlement. I got the seller to pay all my closing costs. I got my commission, and I paid my dad back my down payment. I did an FHA loan. I bought a 4-bedroom. I rented out each room for $500. I zero-based my mortgage. And I said, this is what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. And that summer, I had one transaction and one success story, if you will. And I called every fraternity brother and sorority girl who would take my call. And I said, let me talk to your parents about your housing for next year. And my script was, what are you paying for student housing for next semester, or next school year? Let's use as a down payment. And you will have no housing payments for the next 4 years. And I sold 11 homes that summer.
Wow.
Yeah, and I made $60,000 and blew it all on a 3 Series BMW. But it was a fun summer.
So you bought a car back, not the car back, but a car back that is, just a much better car. I'm assuming it was.
Oh, it was beautiful. But that's what happens when, I just turned 21 over the summer and you make that kind of money.
So you did not reinvest it back into real estate, you're saying?
Not my first transactions, no.
No. But hi, you have to live. I mean, you're the young ones, right? So I don't even know where to start. My gosh. So then what happened then? So you sold 11 homes. All of your friends have housings. They have friends that live with them. What happens then?
By my senior year, I did $306,000 in GCI. My last year of college.
That's
Um,
insane. So you were full-time college. And next to that, you just pulled little north of $250,000 in GCI. What was the average
yes.
household income at the time?
When my average transaction price was like 178.
No, I mean household income. So if you were making 350,000, what was an average household making at
I,
the time?
I would have to look back at a graph because the DC metro area has normally had higher
Yeah, higher.
than average, but it was, I would guessing 4 or 5x what the median was. It was probably in the
So
80s or something.
you were living pretty good in college then.
I
How
was.
about did it help your lady situation?
No, I went and spent most of the money buying rentals because it didn't take very long for me to realize that cars were not a good investment. And then if you fast forward 2007, I thought I was special. I had bought 14 rental properties. On paper, my accountant had told me I was worth $5 million. And I went independent, spent all my money building out an office, and then the world ended. And then in an 8-month period, my accountant then told me I was worth negative $1 million because they were highly leveraged. All my tenants stopped paying me at the same time. It was like the perfect storm. I learned to do short sales on myself. I had to give back my X5 to BMW. Lots of boogers, lots of crying, and best thing that ever happened to me. Right, realizing we're not special and we're just the creatures of markets sometimes. And that was probably one of the best experiences of my life because I had to kind of let go of any construct I had of myself. And I went back to Keller. It was part of a settlement because I actually got sued for non-compete, non-solicitation. So that's a whole nother podcast if you ever want to hear that one. But I was 90 days from bankruptcy. I advanced all my credit cards into my bank account, and I had not that much time before I was going to have to go get a job and get out of real estate. I called a bunch of people who are older and wiser than me. They told me this happens. This is a super cycle. Study the past, and found out where the debt was owned and held, and started doing short sales. Did BPOs, became an REO agent, and within a 3 or 4 year period, I was the number one agent in the world for Keller Williams.
I think we can just end the show, everyone. This was a great episode. Really? So when you were in the midst of in the middle of losing it all that you built so early on, right? Like what did that feel like? Because I understand how you feel today looking back, right? That's the best thing that ever happened to you. Sometimes the hard things are like, if I can come out of that, I know I can come out of anything, kind of, right? But then when you're in it, it doesn't really feels like there's a way out.
No.
So if anyone's listening right now who happens to be in that, not 2008 level, but let's say they're in the midst of the biggest hardship they ever had, what you know today, what would you tell them?
So it was the greatest experience because it made certain things real for me, right? I literally say this all the time. Like, if my wife is safe, my kids are healthy, my parents are still here, I don't really care about anything else, literally, right? Like, the most important things are okay. I can get through anything. And again, God forbid, I've had friends survive one of those tragedies, right? Like, that to me is probably something where I would need as much support as possible. But what I can say is, when you're in those places, what's coming into your head is the most important thing. So I literally would drive around doing broker price opinions, listening to Tony Robbins and The Secret and whatever positive stuff I could actually fill my head with. Because when it was silent, that's when it got scary, right? That's when all the self-doubt creeps in. That's when all the, I told you so, and maybe this is not for us, comes into your head. So what I'll say to people is, if you're not in a place where you can have positive self-talk, fill your head with other stuff, right? Like, I would turn on Audible from the moment I got into the shower until I went to bed, just because I didn't want to be alone with my thoughts. So
I don't want to necessarily admit up to it, but I will. If I have too much time, I will go down on a dark path. So I keep myself very busy. because my brain is always thinking. There's Dwayne, my husband, will tell you there's two options. I'm on or I'm off. Like there's no in between. When I'm on, it's like a million tabs open and, mile a minute. And when I'm off, like even when we're watching TV, in order for me to watch a movie, I have to play a game on my phone. Because as soon as and he would get mad at me, he's like, seriously, can you just not multitask for once, right? But as soon as I put it down, it's about 5 minutes and I'm out. So I have to entertain my brain. And that's why I'm always on all day, every day. Because if I have too much time to think, it might go down in the dark path. And I've been there, done that. I don't want to ever go back there again. So I know the way my brain works. I keep myself busy. Let's talk about the positive things that you're talking about. The Secret. I remember watching The Secret for the first time. I was like, where have this been my whole life? Right? What were those things? Like The Secret, like Tony Robbins.
So
what are those things that change your mind?
So I remember having a vivid conversation in college, which I think kind of puts nails on the head. I had just been to an event, Tony something, and I came back all fired up like you do after some good stuff. And I actually got in an argument with my roommate who literally, I guess, was tired of my rantings. And he said, "You're delusional. You're living in your own world and it's bullshit." And I thought about it for a second. I was like, you're right. But you're also living in your own world that's your own delusion. And I choose my delusion over your delusion. And I think that's when you if you think you're going to win or you think you're going to lose, you're right. Right? Like, again, not talking about NAR specifically because we're not going to go there, but I'll give you an example. I was at an event recently with Elizabeth, the Win event, since you mentioned her. And I'm seeing a tale of two cities in the agents that I'm talking to. There are agents who are literally saying, I'm still not completely up to date on everything, but guess what? I just locked myself in a room and I memorized the words that you and Holly say. And I went and took 3 listing appointments, signed 2 buyer representation agreements, and I'm off to the races. It's working. And then there are the people who I describe as the blue character in Inside Out, who are just like, it doesn't matter what I say. Why did this happen? Woe is me, this sucks. And I don't disagree, but at the same time, like, these are the new rules of engagement we have, and we just have to move forward to it. So that's a good parallel to, again, like, I grew up in Latin America. I've seen governments get toppled, and we did kidnapping drills in school because that's what happened in the 90s in Colombia. Like, nobody chooses that, and then sometimes you have to move to a new country and start over. Nobody chooses that, but like, are you giving up on the video game? Because that's the other option. So you just have to choose, okay, this is the new reality. And like, it's crazy to say that mindset is such a strong thing, but it truly is, right? To me, it's like,
you can't, I say all the time, you can't teach hunger. They're hungry or not, right? Sometimes I feel like I'm dragging our agents to success. It's like that 3-year-old at Target and they're kicking and screaming to the finish line all the way. Right. But the whole NAR thing, I'm like, oh my gosh, just learn the game, just learn the rules of the game and start playing. Like, just think about how much real estate changed since 2011, since I got into it. What if I'm still kicking and screaming because I want to fax offers? Well, good luck, Gogo, because nobody's going to receive it. Your offer is never going to get accepted, right? These are the new rules. Just play by it. Like, for me, I have never, Leo, worked with a buyer without an agency. Never. I was like, if you're not willing, first of all, it's going to cost you nothing. This is in the past, right? It's going to cost you nothing, but you're not willing to sign the contract so my kids can eat. You expect me to work for free, then go and work with somebody else who's willing to work for free because I have to feed my kids. I have never worked without an agency. The only difference really for me now with the NAR thing is that I have to negotiate my commission a few times. I negotiate with the buyers and I negotiate again with the sellers. It's really that simple. But I don't know why anybody's making such a big deal out of it. It's just a minor little change. Get agency just like you do on the listing side and negotiate your commission just like you do on the listing side. Story's over.
But I think it goes back to what you were asking, right? It's like, I think so many people get stuck in their own head, right? Because, my prediction is there's going to be folks, and this is the interesting part. The shift is actually a skills and professional shift, right? I think you nailed it. And I say all agents are listing agents now, right? Because you're doing your presentation, you're getting it signed, and you're negotiating a commission up front, which is what listing agents do. But I think there's a double-digit percentage of people who are licensed who've never taken a listing because of that fear. It's nothing other than, confidence and ability to present and negotiate. And there are people who are going to cross over and people that won't.
Yeah.
And what I've been seeing to folks,
it's super simple. Know your worth and charge tax. Like, you want to work with me? This is what's going to cost. Can you afford it? Or you can't. Go work with somebody who's willing to work for less. It's super safe. I know what I bring to the table. I know my negotiation powers. I know my marketing powers. I know what I can do and how much money I can make them. And I know that what I take in return, it is pennies compared to how much money they're going to make through a real estate transaction. Right. And as soon as, and this is why everything, all road leads to Rome, everything goes back to mindset. If you don't, the only reason you can negotiate your worth is when you don't know your worth.
100%.
When you know what you're worth, I had zero problems walking away from someone. Oh, you don't want to pay me? Go over there. Go to someone who can negotiate their own commission.
Well, the part that I'm trying to make sure agents understand is the amount of time on the buyer agency is actually 3 times statistically than the listing side, right? On average, a listing takes about 30 hours, and on average, a buy side takes anywhere between 80 to 100 hours. And I think there's a lot of agents who have been intimidated by the listing side because they think it's gonna get stuck on the buy side because it's easier. But in actuality, in time and dollars, it's probably harder. And so again, I think the agents that won't make the shift, it's purely a skill and self-confidence level.
Yeah, exactly. That's what you need to work on, the 6 inches between your ears. So then how did you get into technology? So you got really good at transactions. You figured out short terms and foreclosures on your own skin, as you said, right? But how did you pivot from that after you became the number 1 agent? How do you pivot from that into technology?
So I feel like life is a sequence of events, right? That in the moment may feel disconnected, but in the rearview mirror, they feel very logical. So in 2012, after being a top producing REO agent, I saw the rules change. And again, another moment where I'm seeing the rules change, right? So understanding the rules of engagement in a game or in a sport or in a competition, to me, is so pivotal, right? I've always said to people, just give me the rules of the game and I will win. I just need to understand what the rules of engagement are. That's how I got really good at REO. I asked the banks, what's important to you? Is it conversion back to your preferred bank? Like what are the rules where you win and then you give me more business? And what I saw happening in 2012 was Dodd-Frank, CFPB, ability to pay. And I saw that the way people borrowed money to invest in residential real estate was going to change dramatically. And one of these, hindsight is 2020. I was very right. We started a hard money lending business because like you could no longer walk into a local community bank and borrow money on an asset based valuation, meaning it had to, like Gogo's monthly income had to cover the debt, at a 45% ratio. Versus like if you're flipping 3 high-end homes and you have them at 50% LTV, like a bank could no longer do that loan. So we started a hard money lending business that scaled rather quickly. And that was the first time we started
Was
building
was that your own hard money lending, or did you partner with people who had it?
So co-founded it with partners. My wife's been involved in all of our businesses. So she ran our team. She was in the hard money business. She ran the enterprise sales at Remine. And we scaled it to become one of the top businesses in the East Coast. It got to about top 20 in the country. But it was sequential, right? Like at first it was some friends who had some money to lend. Then it became some, successful entrepreneurs in the local market. Then we converted into a Series D regulated fund. Then we, started selling it to Wall Street. So it's always like you see the final product. Especially when you're telling your journey in 30 minutes versus like, hey, no, this was very incremental. Like this worked, this didn't work. We embarrassed ourselves. Let's try something else.
And I'm sure and it wasn't like you had it all figured out before you went into it. I'm assuming you studied it as like a snowball effect, right?
That's actually the biggest thing I tell everybody. Like no one's qualified ever when they start. And my best analogy for that is being a parent, right? Like especially your first kid. Like they hand you this small human and they're like, okay, goodbye. You're like, who's going to keep this thing alive? They're like, you are, Gogo. Compared to your second or third, where you're just like, all right, just one arm. Let's go.
Yeah.
Give him this. He'll be fine. He's got a fever. It's all right. It's no big deal, right? Versus the first kid. So business is the same way in a sense. Like I would say I was not qualified to sell someone a house at 20. I wasn't qualified to be a broker at 23, in my opinion. I wasn't qualified to start a brokerage. I wasn't qualified to represent Fannie and Freddie and the FDIC until I did it, right? I wasn't qualified to raise institutional capital. And then while we were building the lending platform, we needed public record data. We couldn't find it. We actually competed in a hackathon. Again, all kind of accidental. We
What's a
won the
hackathon?
hackathon is when a company typically puts on an event where it was a 24-hour time to build a prototype on an API. And we just wanted public record data ingested into our loan origination system. And
so it's like a technology kind of
it's a contest.
Yeah.
So 200 teams showed up. They said, you have X amount of time to build something. We wanted access to this data. And there was teams from all over the world. And we won. And the judges were Alex Barillo, the CEO of Realty, and Errol Samuelson from Zillow. And they said, hey, what you built is pretty cool. You should turn it into a product. And we had no intent of creating Remine. It was a complete accident. We wanted public record data.
That's how Remine came from winning a game.
And then they invited us back 3 months later, say, hey, why don't you present to a bunch of MLSs? And we presented, and they're like, hey, if you actually build this into a product, we'll be a customer. And we built Remine.
I think we can end the show again. Wow. Wow.
But again, that was a whole nother journey, right? Like, scrappy, bootstrapped, 4-5-person team to, okay, then we ended up raising $48 million of institutional capital, and we had a board, and we grew up to 300 employees. We bought a company in Canada. We had offices in LA and Chicago and DC, and but it was, nothing happens overnight. Everything's sequential. There's a ton of imposter syndrome at all levels all the time, right? And I think that's the part where people get stuck. It's like they see a finished product, whether it's you or me or anybody else, and they just don't realize there's a ton of struggles, there's a ton of failure.
Oh, yeah.
And it's always the getting back up and deciding that you're not done, or even if you fail massively, to say, you know what, I'm going to get back on the horse and try something else.
I learned this lesson. I usually say, well, I learned this lesson. Never going to do this again, right? So how do you deal with stress? What do you call stress?
So stress is super fascinating to me, because what used to stress me out 10 years ago, 20 years ago is laughable now, right? And I'm hyper aware of it because our kids are 7 and 9. And like when my son can't find his book and it's like the end of the world, or my daughter can't find her favorite brush and she's upset for 20 minutes, right? Where, now we have litigation, have conflicts, have real problems. And I'm just like, look, at the end of the day, like, you have to decide how much you're going to let it affect you. Because I truly believe stress is probably the most dangerous thing on the planet. Like, it can literally kill you, give you cancer, all kinds of horrible, horrible things. So it is important that you actually have the awareness of like, okay, what are the boundaries that I'm going to tolerate? And, have to be okay with, okay, I'm just going to put my phone down and put it on do not disturb, and I'll deal with it when I wake up.
Yeah, that's what I do. I'm a sleeper. I have to sleep on it, right? And we could have our biggest argument or whatever. I could have the most stressful day. I'm going to bed. And Dre's like, how the fuck can you go to sleep right now? And I'm like, well, it's there tomorrow. Like, I'll wake up. Nobody's going to solve it. It's going to be there tomorrow.
I think part of the process of, evolving and growing and getting better is also realizing, it's like, I think it was a Gary Vee quote I read once, where it's like 99% of the things that happen don't matter. Like, especially, and as I go through life and get older, it's like, I can think of the worst thing, especially just like leave it to business, not personal. Because I think the death of a loved one is something I would not be able to overcome as easily as business problems. But
yeah, of course. Yeah.
Like my first real loss in business, it was like, I remember it was like 6 months not sleeping and like writing losing hundreds, plural, of thousands of dollars. I always say, like, it all is relative to how much you have. If you have $100,000 and you lose $100,000, that sucks. As much as if you have $10 million and you lose $10 million, it's all relative. But if I think back today about, that experience 10, 15 years ago, it's a memory. It's a lesson learned. It's like, well, I'll never do that again, like you just said. But in that moment, I lost sleep, or I didn't eat. It affected my mood. I probably didn't show up and was present to important moments in my friend, like, my journey was not normal, and I missed, you know, weddings, birthdays, bachelor parties, like events for my family that gun to my head, I don't remember what was so important or why I couldn't be there, whether I was physically there or even mentally present.
I
And
know,
so,
but I mean, I feel like that portion is so hard, right? Because there's definitely a price to pay, right, for everything that we do. And I feel like, as much as I am a firm believer that you can have it all, at the same time, I feel like, no, you can't. Like, sometimes there are truly situations like you have to choose. You have to choose if you get to go out with the girls on this girl weekend, or you're going to stay home and head down and build a business, right? And I feel like the good friends and the family will understand while you're building your empires, as long as you're still there 99% of the time or whatever. But there is a price to pay, though. So let's talk about that a little bit. Do you regret? Because in the same time, I feel like if you were to attend all of those family things, then you wouldn't have what you have today. So because time is so limited, right? Sometimes we just have to choose what we are going to do in that time. Do you regret?
so I live with the philosophy I don't regret anything, because like if change one single thing, then maybe my daughter wouldn't be who she is, and my son wouldn't be here, and I wouldn't have been lucky enough to marry the woman I married. So like those things, like I spend zero time, and again, like shitting on ourselves. I should have done that, or should is like not productive. So, um, but again, like I guess where I've taken it as a lesson learned, like there are things that you should prioritize, and like can become an immovable rock, right? So, no, I don't regret just about anything, just because the journey got me here. Um, but it's also priority, right? Like
But
to
have you
quote Dave
lost
Ramsey.
one? Let me ask you, so have you lost friends over it? Over not being able to be everywhere all the time?
Oh, I mean, again, I'm a nerd and I love data. Like statistically, the average human friendship lasts 7 years. And I remember reading that like 30 years ago and going, not me. I'm going to be different, like in my teens. But if I look over relationships, you have a few handful of relationships that kind of go your whole life. Well, for the most part, like your friends involved based on your occupation. Do you have kids? Like where do you live? And there's different levels to the depth of relationships. And so, um, just be aware that it's a journey, right? So yeah, and again, especially making money and succeeding, quote unquote, by society standards early, I experienced haters much earlier than most people, which I guess in a way prepared me for the rest of my journey. And it's like, oh, okay, like there's all the quotes like who's not clapping when you're winning, and or who's not cheering for you. Like there's all those kind of and then also when you have public losses, or some stumbling in public, it's the friends who text you to say, hey, are you good? Like, how are you? Like, throughout my career, I've definitely had public failures where it was a couple friends, like who are still friends 20 years later. They might not be my closest personal friends, but they're the ones professionally that like I bounce stuff off of. I share ahead of time. I get feedback from. It's just finding your tribe.
Yeah. Yeah, I have lost them. And as today, I'm super proud to say, actually, my childhood best friend, my earliest friend, we've been friends since seventh grade back in Romania. She's here now with her family. They've been here for 2 weeks. There you find some that are your fundamental friends. They're through thick and thin, right? And then you have some for a season and some for a reason. As I like to say it, some come and stay a lifetime, right? Some come and stay a season, whatever season of life you are in, like the play dates, right? And then the kids grow up. So let's talk about do you read books?
I love reading. And again, being so one of the things I talk a lot about is you should have a very honest conversation with yourself about how you're wired as a human being, right? Like, um, I'm really good with words orally, but like if you've ever gotten text message or workplace chats, it looked like probably my 9-year-old got into my phone. Like I'm a horrible speller, and I'm pretty sure I'm probably undiagnosed dyslexic. But in the 90s, in the 80s, nobody labeled us like that. So like he's just slow. Um, so I can't read to save my life, but I can listen at probably 2x, right? Because that's like an adaptation I developed in school. So I can listen to a book or a podcast or YouTube at 2x and actually retain all the information. Um,
Wow. So
when
I
I
cannot learn through my ears, I probably learn, I would say 30%. I just check out. So if I'm driving and listening to a book, I'm looking out and I'm like, shoot, they're still talking. Like I log on, like I've been probably thinking about 10 different things. I learn through my eyes. I have to read it and then I can tell you what letter the paragraph starts with, left side, right side of the page, top or bottom. I'm super visual, but the information has to come through my eyes, not my ears.
So again, that's a perfect example of just understanding how you're wired and not make like I actually took speed reading courses. I actually paid people money to make me a better reader, and what you experience audibly, I experience visually. So I was just like, nope, this doesn't work at all. And so then I found, Audible. I've probably been my lifetime value payment to that company is astronomical because I make my $19 a month payment religiously, but like just realize how you're wired and then create a system for it. Right.
So I also have to write it down. So I mean, watch how many notebooks I have on my desk. One,
see,
two,
I can't read my own handwriting. I don't know what I wrote
three.
down and where.
I have 3 notebooks active at all times because one's in my purse, one is in my nightstand or somewhere around the house, and one's on my desk. Right now, all 3 of them are on my desk because last night I was watching masterclass and taking notes. So that's the other thing. Since it's through my eyes, yes, I will comprehend that if I see it, but if I write it down with my own handwriting, it's like it's engraved into my brain.
And I love that you explain that versus mine because that's exactly what I'm talking about. So where I get worried for people is if they listen to us on a podcast or see me on a stage or see you on a stage, and then you can translate this to anything, right? Like I took 100 listings cold calling, right? The equivalent for that of me is reading, right? Like it goes against my DNA. It makes me unhappy. It reduces my energy. It gives me anxiety. Like I am not.
You know how many cold callings I've ever done? If I had to make it in real estate through cold calling, I'd rather take a night shift at Taco Bell on Christmas Eve before I will call a stranger and beg them for their business.
So perfect example. EXPCon in Vegas. An hour before I was supposed to go on and speak to 6,000 people, our presentation got messed up. Like the numbers were screwed up. I basically freestyled to 6,000 people for an hour. Right? Like that gives most people anxiety and fear and all those things, but I like being with people. I'm a 99I. I'm a 99D.
Yeah, me too.
And so knowing how you're wired means you should put yourself in situations all day. So like a great example is, I think next Thursday, I have 5 hours of finance calls where I look at every single number in our company and we close out the month and that's how we prep for earnings. Like I can do it. My IQ is high enough. I can read the spreadsheets, but like at the end of the day, like I'm not going to do date night with my wife. I'm not going to do stuff with my kids because I'm probably not going to show up as the person I want to be. Right. Versus, there's days where it's like, I need to give myself space to just be alone because then my energy completely gets drained.
Yeah. So go ahead.
And I think that's the superpower to life. If you can actually figure out what it is that gives you energy and not esoterical crystal, just like, very tactical, and do that for long periods of time, you'll actually be successful, right? So it's like, there's so many different ways to attack entrepreneurship, right? Like, I don't care if it's selling houses, cars, widgets, software, services, right? There is the Gogo way of social, and you have a top of the funnel to lead conversion. Like when you start talking about that stuff, you light up. I've seen you do it. That stuff is not my jam, and that's okay. You have something that works for you. There's so many different interesting ways. Because the other thing with entrepreneurship, you only need to connect with your tribe, right? Like you need to attract the people who are actually going to be wired like you, right? If I attracted a whole bunch of people that don't speak the same language that I do from a business standpoint, I'm going to have a harder time selling to them, giving them customer support, being engaging with them because it's just a different personality type.
Yeah, Brand Group said it best. I learned this one from Brand. I'm looking for the people who are looking for me.
Yep.
And that's the same in agent attraction. That's the same in any product I create. That's the same for sellers, buyers, whoever I'm looking for. I'm looking for the people who think and see the world. I see the world because my other favorite quote is, you never work a day in your life if you love what you do.
So I've heard that one, and I'm not sure I fully, because I love what I do, but there's days where this is work.
I know, but imagine how much worse it would be if you hated just the thought of having to wake up and do it all over again.
I'm being a smartass.
No, I know. I mean, there are days I tell Dwayne all the time, I'm like, there's a reason why some people don't make it to a certain level, because the stress of some days, I would say probably 99% of people could not take it, right? There are days when I'm like, even like I could lose my SHIT, like lose it.
And I also remind people that there are seasons where it feels like that, right? Like I actually, anytime I get in front of large groups of agents, I talk about this. Like this will be the worst year in real estate history from a transaction standpoint in like 30 years. We are actually in a recession of transactions, right? So most people's business down at the top line is down 20%, right? Like just if there's 3.9 million homes and you service, Florida, like there's less than transactions than the previous 2 years, right? And so even just saying that out loud, and like I said it at Speak On last year, I'm going to say it again, like right now, winning feels like surviving. And sometimes it's really good for the brain to understand that, because if you don't actually verbalize it and understand the math, all of a sudden you're like, wait, am I failing? Is something wrong with me? Right? Because especially in an industry where a lot of it is perception and verbatim, like we have. But if you actually say, hey, by the way, the whole country's down 20%, right? Most real estate companies are unprofitable. Most teams are unprofitable. But right now you're actually taking market share because the alternative is you're no longer in the business. And you get past the other side when interest rates, get to historically better rates. And even if we just get to 5 million transactions, oh, by the way, you took 10% more market share. Even though you went down in transaction count, your market share actually expanded. You partnered with more people who survived the low transactional years.
So I want to talk about something super quick. So my trackers have trackers. I have tracked everything from production to where my money's coming from, where my leads are coming, like everything. I like to look at the data. For whatever reason, numbers never lie, right? For me, it's like numbers don't have feelings. I don't have to feel, how did I do this year? I can look at the spreadsheet from this year versus last year, right? So I'm huge, and I teach everyone all the time, you have to have trackers. What you don't measure, you can grow. And also understand the market and where you fall into that season of life, right? Like it also could be someone who is 60 something ready to retire. They look at today's market super different than someone who 19 just got licensed, right? It's also not just where the market is, but where you are in the season of life. It's super important. I want to talk about why on earth would someone who so said never had a real job in parentheses would take one.
So I will give mad props to Glenn Sanford, is probably one of the better salespeople I've ever met, and everything's about his script. So the story is, I got a call from a mutual friend who said, hey, someone's going to call you, pick up. And he called me and he said, hey, I've heard great things. Do you want to be our CTO or Chief Technology Officer? And I said, I can play one on TV, but I don't actually like it. So no, thank you. And I hung up politely. Called me a week later and he's like, I wasn't expecting you to say no. Why don't you come hang out with me in Arizona where he was? We spent a whole day together. And then he said, okay, I've gotten to know you. We get along. What are you going to do? And I said, I'll probably start another company because that's what I've done my whole life. I said, do you have the idea? And I said, nope, I'm actually pretty burnt out. Like building a software company was the hardest thing we've ever done. And he said, well, why don't you come hang out here and help me fix some stuff? Like we have a big company, we grew super fast. There's all kinds of stuff to fix. Come up with a title that you like, and just whenever you're ready, I can buy the company, I can invest in your Series A, I'll high five you on the way out. And so that was the pitch. And so I came on as the president of the affiliate companies to kind of help with the portfolio of companies. And 6 months later, he called me and he said, so you're touching this, you're touching that. I like the title Chief Strategy Officer, which keeps you not the face of the company. I stay the face of the company, but you can operationally touch everything you want. And then 18 months later, he said, you're the CEO. The board and I decided. And obviously, my mood changed. I kind of got really excited to get to know all of you guys. I mean, like the coolest part of the role is I get to partner with what I think are the smartest real estate entrepreneurs on the planet. In a couple of the rules were, I don't know how to act in a corporate setting. I've never had a job. And Glenn actually said that's the number one reason he wanted me here. He's like, you're not a corporate guy. Like break anything and everything that doesn't make sense to you. And, you know, I'm an entrepreneur in my DNA. Like I can't change that. And that's actually, I think, what Glenn was most attracted to. So,
So I have
uh,
I absolutely love the story. I have a question for you though. Um, this is more on the personal level, but let's, put it out there to the world. So I feel like lately I'm getting more and more opportunities where I'm dealing with boards and corporations and attorneys, and the speed of how they get things done versus entrepreneurial speed. Like I want to pull my hair out. Like weeks
Yeah.
go by the time the board chooses it over and the attorneys look at a contract, and then they come back with like one thing that they want to change, and then we go back for another few weeks of doing the same thing over and over again. How does that ever bother in the corporate world, or do you just bulldoze through
yeah,
it,
no,
or what
no.
or what what do you do?
So again, so I said my story was sequential, right? Like in retrospect, it kind of feels like it's all over the place, but I wouldn't be able to do what I am doing right now if I hadn't gone through like the experience of raising institutional equity and then having a real board and and having people to respond to and actually be able to say like this is gross revenue and this is gross margin and this is EBITDA and being audited by Deloitte and like there's been processes and experiences that have made me mature as an entrepreneur. But then there's also, always, and this I admire from Glenn, is understanding like those experts are there to help give you guidance, but at the end of the day, you're the one making the business decision. And so, um, you know, even though we're a large company, there's things and moments where, we behave just like a large company and it's slow and painful for very good reasons like SEC filings and all that kind of stuff. But then there's other times where I think we move rather fast because it's either me or Glenn make a decision and we just go pull the trigger, right? But it, I would say it's part of the journey, right? There are certain things at certain levels that will always have that level of kind of slow down team, as I call it. And then there's other things where I think that's why even large organizations outperform other large organizations because they still have that small and nimble mentality. You only need a couple people to have it, and just set that's the expectation. So again, like there's some things I've done that were unmovable. Like, right, anyone who feels like a government agency or there's just things that like and I say that because I've sold properties for Fannie, Freddie, the FDIC. There's just things like this is the way, right? Or even like when I worked with MLS associations, that felt very government-ish at the speed at which they make decisions. They have to meet with boards because you got to also appreciate like different organizations have different decision trees. Like nonprofits or associations or government, there is no CEO. There's no person that can make a decision for good or bad in that stakeholder situation. They have titles like that, but sometimes they very much have a board that has quite a bit of say, and it's different.
So you're pretty much saying that there's no way around it, and when you grow up in this industry, you have to learn patience, is what you're saying.
Yes and no. I'm saying that there are some times that there is no way around it, but then there's other times where if the other party on the other side is nimble, you won't have that experience. And a lot of that could be asking like just like a listing appointment. I would almost, it's like, hey, I see that we're going to go through a process. What is my expectation for turnaround time? Like just even asking the question could even change the dynamic because they're like, oh, well, normally this is what happens. I'm like, okay, that doesn't work for me. Like if we're going to go down this road, I need to know that this is going to be, I want this done in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And if they say you're out of your mind, it's going to be 6 months, then they're anchoring a timeline with you, which is also helpful, right? Because I think where the pulling your hair out comes from missed expectations, right? Like if somebody tells you it's going to be 6 months and it takes 5 months, you're like, whoa, that was awesome, right? Like, versus if you in your mind think it's going to be a week and it takes 6 months and they do it in 5 months, they think we are rock stars, we killed it, and you think this was horrible, right? So I think clear communication and just about everything in life makes life so much easier.
Yeah. What's the best way of someone to get a hold of you, Leo?
Workplace.
And if they are not EXP?
Instagram.
So Leo Pareja? There we go, guys. And Pareja is spelled Pareja.
It's correct.
And what is a book that you would recommend? Or 3?
the last one I read, because I'm trying to be more like you when I grew up, Gogo, is Day Trading Attention by Gary Vaynerchuk. Probably a really good example of like, intellectually I understand that the world is going to social. In my personality and everything else, I've been resisting it for 15 years. And in this role, I was like, you don't have a choice. You have to have, like, I made my Facebook account 2 days before.
Your videos are so good though. You're killing it.
But it's not in my DNA. I don't like it. It's uncomfortable.
You're
It
fish
is
out of
literally
water.
against my will, because if I want to be the leader that you guys need me to be, I don't have a choice about my feelings, right? Like, that's a perfect example of like, it doesn't come natural to me. Like, I reread everything, like, especially, with me fully disclosing, I feel like I write like a third grader. It's like, ChatGPT has been my best friend in editing, spelling. I write it so it's in my voice, but I'm like, just fix the grammar and the spelling, but keep the tone. But like, that's a perfect example. Like, it doesn't come naturally at all. Posting videos, like talking into a camera, like, it's like cold calling for me. But if I want to be a leader in this moment, I have the choice to say, okay, I'm going to get over my own bullshit and just do it.
Yeah, for me, that's empathy. I use ChatGPT. Like, I write whatever I want to say, and then I'm like, okay, put some empathy in it. Because I do not have empathy.
It's very natural to me. So for me, it's just like, because when I said edit it, it changed my voice. I'm like, no, keep the tone. Like, just spelling and grammar. Just that hard.
For me, I'm like such an Eastern European dude. We have a problem. Here's the solution. The end. Right? Where it's like, oh, this is how you feel about the problem. I'm like, I don't want to freaking feel about the problem. Like, I don't feel about it. Right? So since I don't naturally have empathy, I use ChatGPT to put empathy into the things, because I know when it comes to sales that people want to feel. They want you to feel what they feel before they buy a product, right? And I don't feel. Now everyone knows it was ChatGPT. It's not me. I don't do the feeling portion of it. And I don't know. That has to do, I think, with being from Eastern Europe, and we don't do feelings. There was never like kind words. There's no hugs. There's no physical. There's no verbal. There's no affirmation whatsoever. That, right, this is life and this is how you do it. And so I have to unlearn. There are certain things that we are so wired through culture or through the family or the upbringing or just the way we are, right, that you have to break that chain. And if you're not naturally able to, then there's technology called ChatGPT.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Leo, for your time today. Again, the best way to get a hold of Leo is on Instagram under Leo Pareja. And Leo, thank you for allowing me to pick your brain. I know that an hour of your time is an hour of your life. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining Gogopreneur. Keep that go-getter spirit alive. Until next time, go get 'em.